What's up, it's ENDYMION, and there's been some shakeups in the Warhammer scene as well as Dungeons & Dragons that I think I really need to get more eyes on. Obviously, the Custodes thing happened, and since then the perception surrounding Warhammer has soured, but if reports are to be believed, this hasn't stopped Games Workshop from soaring in sales regardless. Is the backlash failing? We'll look into that. Space Marine 2 has a worrying update as well as a prominent activist demanding that Warhammer bends the knee, like Dungeons & Dragons has, and a D&D developer claiming that it's his job to remove white men from the hobby entirely. It's a lot, so let's begin with that activist story first. This comes from that Park Place. Woke activist wants Games Workshop to turn orcs into Dungeons & Dragons orcs. Who do we contact at Games Workshop to move them in this direction? In case you don't know, recently Wizards of the Coast, who owns Dungeons & Dragons, released a bunch of images detailing their new looks for many of the different races within that world. Although a lot of criticism was brought up because the redesigns made characters look less fantasy-esque, to put it lightly, and more like just actual people that are LARPing as fantasy races. One image brought a lot of ire, which was this one featuring a bunch of D&D orcs that look like cosplayers instead of what orcs are usually depicted as. As you can see here, you have fat body positivity orc in the background there, as well as very humanoid, not orc at all looking children all over. There's of course the focus on this female orc in the middle who looks like your typical lesbian, who even has the half-shaved haircut and everything. A lot of users on Twitter especially were saying that Wizards of the Coast have turned orcs into basically fantasy Mexicans. Which, I mean, they're not wrong when you look at this image. Anyways, what does D&D have to do with Warhammer, you might be asking? Well, one activist, who I'll get into who they are in a bit, went to Twitter using this very same image where they said, "I think the 40K orcs could learn from the orcs in D&D. Who do we contact at Games Workshop to move them in this direction?" Now you might be saying, well, this is just some random Twitter user, right? Anyone could have said this. Why is this worth speaking about? Well, it turns out this Kaya person is actually a moderator attached to franchises like Trench Crusade. If you don't know what Trench Crusade is, it's a lot like Warhammer, but its Discord servers are actually sadly similar to something like current Helldivers 2. Which, if you watched my previous video on Helldivers, the moderators there have went out of their way to ban anyone against identity politics. And if you question the status quo when it comes to wokeness, you are banned from Helldivers 2's official Discord. It's the same thing with Trench Crusade as well. The official Discord will effectively ban you if you even utter anything that goes against their agenda. Effectively meaning that no politics are allowed within Trench Crusade's Discord or its community officially, unless of course it is championing woke identity politics, sadly. A lot of these sorts of franchises are doing this openly more and more these days. It's a way for them to, in their own warped way of thinking, removing the users they deem that have wrongthink by not allowing them to have voices at the table. Everything must adhere to this agenda, or it gets destroyed from the inside out. So like I was saying, the person who is advocating for orcs in Warhammer to become cosplay Mexican LARPing orcs like in D&D is one of these individuals who has made it their mission to push their politics and agendas onto legions of others, or they ban them. Don't harass this person, by the way, because if you do, it'll just fuel them to increase their victimhood status even further. Plus, I never condone harassment of any kind. This individual did say more about this sort of thing on Twitter too. Now that 40K is successfully woke and conquered and Helldivers just about there, where are we going next? Battletech? Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to tweet this. This was meant for the Secret Council of Woke Conquest. Obviously, they're trying to make fun of people like myself and others for pushing against this stuff, but it kind of proves what I've been saying. The sad reality is that this sort of mentality has become normalized by many out there within the games and entertainment industry. One YouTuber named John Delaraz researched into this Kaya person who was going as far as to stalk individuals from the Trench Crusade Discord and then looking for wrongthink. He made a whole video about this around a month ago, and to summarize, Trench Crusade was quickly becoming the alternative to 40K once the Adeptus Custodes thing happened and people were migrating away from that hobby. But they wanted something similar, and Trench Crusade on the surface was what people wanted, very religion-based, grim-dark, all of that sort of stuff. But of course, once people joined, it turned out Trench Crusade was actually worse than Warhammer pretty much in every way. And like I was saying, it turns out Trench Crusade was normalizing and encouraging its moderators like this Kaya individual who has set their sights on Warhammer that it was okay to ban people for wrongthink. These moderators would actually seek out users outside of Discord even if they agreed and were totally normal within the actual Discord itself. If your presence on, say, Twitter was not considered okay, you were then banned from the Discord anyways. This is a gross overreach, of course, because it's effectively one platform using their unmitigated power within to cast judgment on users based on their actions from a totally separate platform that they have no power over. It sets a scary precedent. Imagining this level of oversight when it comes to, say, your preferred gaming console of choice or something too would be worrying. You could make a joke on Twitter and then your Steam account would get banned. You see what I mean? These sorts of individuals are infiltrating Warhammer as well and effectively turning the entire thing into a wrong-think versus right-think cluster you-know-what. One user who encountered these activists that are trying to ruin everything explained how they got banned. Here's what they said. I got the boot. I was friendly for the few posts I was allowed to make, so I guess my crime was putting an emoji on 2 pearl-clutching posts. My history was wiped along with the general and TC channels 2 days ago, so I guess they are tracking down everyone's X accounts. John Delaraz, who was eventually banned from the Trench Crusade Discord by the same moderator named Kaya, posted screenshots of his interactions with this individual who was setting their eyes on Warhammer. Kaya said, "Good morning, do you mind deleting this? Of course, don't mind people being critical of the Discord or making fun of it. I'd like to stop at posting people's pictures though." John was in trouble because he posted the public profile of a Trench Crusade moderator in the video that I talked about previously. John of course said he wouldn't do it because a Discord profile of this individual named Maple is public, which yes it is. It's not against terms of service at all to post someone's public profile. After all, I've had my Twitter profile posted by people who hate me on Reddit, for example. I won't go out of my way to hunt these people down and tell them to remove my public profile, whether it's YouTube or Twitter, because again, it's public. There's no violation of terms of service here at all, so the only reason why Kaya here wants this moderator's face covered is because they want their demands met. John then posted an exchange with Kaya, which I'll put on screen here. I won't read you the whole thing, but pretty much Kaya said John put the Discord in a tough spot, and then they rejected his appeal to be unbanned because he wouldn't cooperate with their demands. And again, these are the sorts of individuals who are allowed to police and dictate what is considered right-think or not in many of these online spaces. And unfortunately, when it comes to Warhammer, they're being infiltrated by these sorts of individuals all the time. Circling back to the orcs, I would say that I really hate their modern redesign in D&D, and I genuinely hate how franchises are updating their various fictional races for the modern audience because they're turning everything more humanoid, I guess, for lack of a better word. Because orcs are not humans, they are orcs. They're meant to be huge monsters with tusk-like teeth and scary colored eyes. Because they're not humans, obviously. I think what D&D did to their orcs here is stupid. I agree with people that they did just turn them into green Mexican people, which honestly is more racist than their previous designs. Because orcs are not supposed to be allegories or depictions of actual human races in real life. They're meant to be fantastical and, well, you know, not real. But I think what we're seeing when it comes to orcs and these weirdos who are pushing to advocate for such changes towards franchises like Warhammer and more is that they cannot separate reality from fiction. Everything has to blur and be the same, which in turn doesn't do anything but make everything worse. And then it just ends up ruining the whole concept of escaping reality when it comes to enjoying fantasy. In other bad news as well, Warhammer 40K Space Marine 2's public beta has been cancelled recently too. The game's release date hasn't changed, but the developers went to their blog to post why they aren't allowing the public to beta test the game prior to release. They said, and I quote, "Space Marine 2 is almost ready. We are now entirely focused on optimization, polish, and fixing remaining issues ahead of launch on September 9th. This means we will not run a public online beta as it would take the development teams away from preparing for the full launch, and our priority is to ensure the best possible experience at release. We know this is disappointing news for some of you. As a thank you for those interested in participating, players who registered via the online sign-up before June 28, 2024 midnight Paris time will receive the limited bolt pistol skin instead. We appreciate your understanding and continued support as we work towards delivering the exceptional game you deserve." End quote. So instead of getting your public beta, which by the way was a perk marketed as something you get for pre-ordering, they are now not allowing you to access it, but you'll get a free gun skin instead, which honestly is kind of lame and disingenuous of them as well. This sparks some red flags that if they're this close to release and they are now canceling big public betas like this, that the game is definitely in trouble behind the scenes. This isn't the first time, however, that Space Marine 2's devs have spoken out of both sides of their mouths either. Since in another blog post, Space Marine 2's devs confirmed that the game would not have microtransactions and that all future enemies, modes, maps, and whatnot for its online multiplayer mode would be free of charge and available to everyone, yet they detail in the same post that there won't be an in-game cash shop. Except they also confirmed that the game will have DLC and be cosmetic only, which is what a cash shop is, by the way. The game will also have a season pass with cosmetics available as well, which is also paid for, and none of this really makes any sense. How does your game not have microtransactions or an in-game cash shop, yet it has paid cosmetics and a season pass? How are you able to buy these paid cosmetics or season passes then if you don't have a cash shop? That's literally what microtransactions are. The more I hear about Space Marine 2, the more worried I get. The game is in the top 10 most wish-listed games right now on Steam. Which I mean is good, it means there's obviously hype for it, but first you lie about microtransactions and now you just cancel your public beta. I really hope this game isn't in trouble, but I mean all the signs are there, not to mention one of the writers of the game being a virtue signaling activist too. But let's keep moving on because there's still more to cover. As I said in the beginning of this video, the boycott of Warhammer doesn't seem to be as effective as people once believed, at least according to one article anyway. From Wargamer, this one says, Games Workshop announces record Warhammer profits yet again. According to the report, Games Workshop has seen a profit of $250 million this quarter after their 40K and Age of Sigmar franchises continue to sell. And retailers, according to this post, are struggling to keep up with demand for the more popular factions and releases. And Games Workshop is also currently in the process of getting government approval to create a 40,000 square foot factory to meet demand. And yes, 40,000 square feet, 40K, yeah I know, the joke writes itself, but moving on. Based on this article, it seems that Games Workshop is doing very well despite the backlash of the female custodies, as well as the mass cancellation of Warhammer Plus subscriptions that flooded Twitter around that announcement. Could it be that the brand is just too powerful and has far too many loyal customers that nothing can really stand in its way when it comes to its dominance? Maybe, although Wargamer is also a pro-Warhammer fan site, so they could be spinning the story to make it look better than it is, but I do still trust that at least they'll give accurate information anyways. Despite all of this, it's clear that Warhammer has a lot of weird problems that they really need to fix. Space Marine 2 canceling its public beta is a big red flag in my opinion. It makes me believe that the game will likely not work properly at release when it comes to its multiplayer. If they were confident that they could deliver the experience that they were advertising, they would have gone through with the beta. I truly hope that Space Marine 2 doesn't end up being yet another AAA release that has performance issues, bad matchmaking, and bugs aplenty at release. Because like I said in a video around a month ago, Space Marine 2 has the potential to fill the void that Helldivers 2 has been moronic to fill, due to their identity political moderators that keep ruining everything Helldivers 2 lately. But if there's one thing that is plaguing not only Warhammer, but Dungeons & Dragons and so many others, it's this next story, which is kind of a fusion of really everything that I talk about on this channel, so consider this next segment just an all-in-one topic. This comes from the same article that started this video involving that moderator Kaya, Trench Crusade, and how these activist types are eyeing Warhammer to change their orcs and all of that. This unfortunately gets proven true when we look at things like Dungeons & Dragons. There's a YouTuber channel called 3 Black Halflings, which I never heard of until right now. They interviewed someone who works at Wizards of the Coast, whose name is Kyle Brink, who's the executive producer over at Wizards. And this Kyle Brink guy explicitly states that when it comes to modern media franchises that his kind, as he puts it, which he means white men, are no longer the target audience when it comes to these corporations, and that he loves that this is the case. Yeah, here's what Kyle Brink had to say via this interview, and I quote, This is not the face of the hobby anymore. I'm not the majority of this hobby anymore, and so it's important to me that my team of creators look like my players and have the lived experience that my players do. And I think there's been mistakes made in years past where people assume that D&D players were all, white dudes in a basement, which has been a faulty assumption for a lot of years and gets more and more false every day. And so in my viewpoint, honestly, guys like me can't leave soon enough for this hobby. And we owe you good games, we owe you good products, and so we need to make sure that everyone working on it is real good at it. And that means not just hiring, but developing. When we bring people in who are good, we need to empower them, give them more room to run, give them guidance on what we learned when we created stuff so they can create great stuff too. And then I always hire people smarter than me so I can get out of their way. That's my approach. As long as we stay on this trajectory, the face of Dungeons & Dragons will literally change." End quote. Oh boy, so the amount of secondhand embarrassment I felt reading this, and I even went ahead and watched this part from the video, which I don't want to post here because who knows, they might copyright me. And yeah, it's true. This Kyle Brink guy actually said this stuff with a straight face. When you unironically say guys like me can't leave soon enough for this hobby, what are we even doing anymore, guys? Seriously. This is someone who is all in on the woke agenda and truly believes that his skin color somehow has become obsolete when it comes to the future. God, there's so much to dissect from his statement, so let's just go piece by piece. Saying this is not the face of the hobby anymore is insane. There is nothing wrong with being a white man. I don't care how many corporations try to condition me to somehow hate my skin color or gender, it's never going to happen. Let it be known that I love that I'm a white guy, the same way I hope you love whatever skin color or gender you are too. Why is it okay to shame a particular group of individuals into these humiliation rituals? It's such loser behavior. And since when did we all assume that Dungeons & Dragons or Warhammer fans were exclusively white males? They aren't, but are we really going to play pretend and act like white males didn't have a huge hand in making these franchises into what they are today? Which they did, by the way, absolutely, and that's not racist to say, it's fact. This self-defeatist mentality is why so much stuff is so bad these days, and Kyle Brink here confirms what he means by this is DEI and pushing agendas. The fact he states that we owe you good products and make sure everyone is good at what they do, and that Wizards does this by empowering them, which Kyle means people of color, and then he goes further by stating giving them room to run and guidance means exactly what you think, which is that he means hiring people based on gender and identity, and then giving them all the space and power they need to make whatever it is that they want. And of course, he finishes his statement by saying he always hires people who are better and smarter than he is, and then he just stays out of their way. Like, dude, what are you even talking about? I'm getting secondhand embarrassment from all of your statements here. This is pathetic. How self-defeating must you be that you diminish your own achievements like this? You're the executive producer of Wizards of the Coast. You literally oversee stuff like D&D and the franchises that spawn from it like Baldur's Gate and more. How can you act like your achievements and position are not a direct result of your dedication to your craft? And then to act like you are no longer welcome in the hobby that you spent your entire life fostering and creating and being okay with? That is insane to me. This guy's brain has been irreparably morphed by the dozens of struggle sessions and Zoom calls where he listens to people tell them their victimhood stories. How can you be this pathetic, unironically, for the world to see and be okay with that? The only reason I can see this Kyle Brink guy doing this is because he knows that if he steps out of line, he will be cooked and blacklisted. That's the only explanation I can reasonably think of as to why he's like this, because no dude who knows his worth is this pathetic on purpose for no reason. It's no wonder that stuff like Wizards of the Coast, Warhammer, Helldivers, and more, they are all self-sabotaging themselves when the people who should be calling the shots like Soy Boy Kyle over here end up having no backbone and has been completely dissolved, and he can do nothing but roll over and then just denounce his own skin color all the time. These people have become hostages in their own hobby and they are so scared that they cannot stand up against it. I'll speak for Kyle here since I know he can't clearly, but what he's doing is not okay. If Wizards or Warhammer or whatever else is for everyone, that includes white men too, by the way. And clearly by catering to the wants of your fan base, which was or still is predominantly white males clearly that has led to your success, And by staying true to what you originally created anyways, has obviously pulled in people of other skin colors and whatnot, regardless of you changing anything. Kyle, he gives me the vibes that he's the kind of dude who lets his wife sleep with other men while he watches, and then he even grabs them juice and some cookies once they're all done in bed. Like, I can't imagine a more sorry and sad individual if I tried, man. I genuinely just feel bad for this dude. Guys like me can't leave this hobby soon enough. How pathetic can you be, really? If he does let other men sleep with his wife, I wouldn't be surprised, which he has such a self-defeatist attitude like this to begin with. But this is what is becoming of these franchises. Just pick any of them and I guarantee you that there's multiple guys who work there like Kyle who have the same attitude. It's no wonder that Dungeons & Dragons' reputation is getting clowned on all the time. As for Warhammer, despite the backlash, they're still selling, but it is worrying to see that Space Marine 2 is where it is right now. As for the whole turn 40k orcs into modern audience raced ambiguous weirdos, and stalking people on social media in order to get them banned, none of that is okay either. I know this video is more of a doomer one than usual, but I'm sadly just very bummed out by the absolute state of these franchises and more. We used to just have great products, now we just have propaganda stores that just shill for activists instead. And man, it saddens me greatly. But thanks for watching, I appreciate it immensely. Thanks to my patrons, let me know what else I should cover, and like, subscribe, and share the video as well. Thank you. Have a great day. Please don't lose hope. Hopefully I can find some news that'll pick our spirits up, but this time anyways, man, this sucks. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon.